A while ago, I'm pretty sure it was over a month now, I did a few videos about NetherRealm's next video game. What I would like it to be, what I think it might be. We took a look at some of the quotes directly from Ed Boon, broke them down a little bit, tried to interpret them from there. I'll link a few of those videos at the end of this one, just in case you're curious. But what I want to talk about today is a quote directly from Ed Boon, the man himself, the creative director at NetherRealm Studios. And we won't be going over all of the questions in this video because, quite frankly, there's a lot of stuff in here, and a lot of that stuff is Mortal Kombat related, and I don't really talk about Mortal Kombat on this channel. So, with that in mind, we're just going to be focusing on the one question. But if you would like to watch the full video with Ed Boon and Gamespot, I'll leave a link in the description to the full article. It's not really an article. It's just a page on a website with a link to the video. But regardless, I'll leave it linked in the description. The question we'll be looking at was phrased as so. Considering the way that Aftermath ends, do you guys have any interest in exploring Mortal Kombat outside of the fighting game genre? Is that something you'd like to do? Are we going to be getting a Mortal Kombat rhythm game or whatever it may be? I think that this question is important, and I'm glad that the interviewer asked it. There's been a lot of speculation in the NetherRealm community about what exactly the next NetherRealm title is going to be, especially given his interview at Summer Games Fest, which seemed weird enough for even me to cover. People had been wondering if there was a chance that the next NetherRealm title might not even be a fighting game. Some people would really love to see that, and some people would dread the day that NetherRealm isn't making fighting games. I probably lean a little bit more to the dread side than the excitement side. But here's been like my speculation stance on this. I'm sure the team at NetherRealm would love to do something that isn't a fighting game. After all, from a developer perspective, you probably don't want to be working on the same genre of game for your entire life, and it might feel like that's what you're doing when you work at a fighting game company for so long. But there are a lot of moving parts at a big company like this, and actually making that happen is a lot more difficult than it may seem at face value. If you have investors saying that you want fighting games, and then you have other people within the company saying we don't want fighting games, that's going to immediately clash, and guess which one's going to win? It's going to be the investors. But just a quick example of something else that might happen to make fighting games more likely than anything else from NetherRealm Studios. Imagine you're a company like DC, and you're the guy who decides what games get made and what games don't get made. And eventually you decide, okay, I want an action adventure game, or I want an adventure game, or I want an action game. The specific example doesn't really matter, but let's say you want an action game. Why would you ever go to NetherRealm Studios over a company like WB Montreal, which has experience in the genre? From a business perspective, it doesn't really make sense to go to the fighting game studio when you could just as easily go to the studio that's known for making action games. Anyway, Ed Boon answered the question very well and very straightforwardly. He replies, to the exact words of your question, when you say, do we think about it? Absolutely. We're thinking about it all the time. Shaolin Monks is a good example of that. But the process of making that happen has been a little more challenging. You know, we really are just one studio. We did a game called Injustice, and that did well. Then we did a sequel, and that did even better. So unfortunately, we can't really do all the things we want to do at the same time. And so there are a lot of logistics that would need to be worked out on top of us wanting to do it. So in that reply, he talked about some of the complications of actually making any game happen, kind of what I was speaking to a little earlier. Basically, he's saying any non-fighting game happening from that studio would be pretty difficult to make happen. Now, he does talk about Injustice here, which is of course a reason for me to talk about this. I do want to unpack this a little bit because I see a lot of people talking about it, and some people seem to think that Ed Boon is hinting at an Injustice 3 here. I don't think this answer reads to a hint of Injustice 3. Now, don't be disappointed by that. Injustice 3 should be our base assumption for what the next NetherRealm title should be. So I'm not really trying to hunt for evidence pointing towards Injustice 3 just because I think it's the most likely outcome already, just based on the way that history has unfolded so far. On the other hand, Ed Boon is very particular with his words, and he didn't need to bring up Injustice in that answer. So maybe he was hinting at something, but I don't feel the need to read too much into that. But what I do think was practically confirmed in this interview is that the next NetherRealm title will probably be a fighting game. I know, right? Big shock. I would imagine the vast majority of you already thought that that was going to be the case, but just to reiterate, my extrapolation of the most recent words coming out of Ed Boon's mouth is that it would be very unlikely for NetherRealm to make anything that isn't a fighting game anytime soon. Possible, but unlikely. Regardless, I thought it was worth going over. I think it's important to keep track of everything that Ed Boon says, just because it gives us a better idea of what's going on at NetherRealm Studios. And the more information we have about that, the more happy I am, because I love everything that studio puts out, so keeping an eye on them keeps me calm. Thanks for watching. If you found this video enjoyable or informative, I'd appreciate you leaving a like or a comment on the video. And of course, subscribe to keep up to date with whatever I'm doing. My name has been BILBZY, and I'll be sure to catch you in the next video.